Hello YouTube, I'm Dayno, and you're about to watch a super weird version of a game that you're already familiar with. Alright, for those of you who are not familiar with this game, usually this is played over commercial breaks whenever there's a Pokemon episode on. Right before the commercial break, they'll provide you a silhouette, and then at the end of the commercial break, they'll tell you whose silhouette it was. So it's kind of a guessing matching game. But this one's going to be a little weird because instead of providing you a silhouette, I'm actually going to paint the Pokemon for you. And if you're familiar with my work, then you know that I really paint weird stuff. Really psychedelic, very fluid, dynamic. And that's why this is going to be hard because I'm not going to hold any of that back. I'm going to get real weird with it. So weird, in fact, that I'll bet even some of the super fans are not going to get this right. But now that you understand the premise, let's go ahead and get started. We'll give it a go. Give it a go. All right, so in lieu of the usual clue that you get for this game, which is a silhouette of a Pokemon, I've opted for an alternate clue. Since I'm gonna break up the shapes so much, you're instead gonna have to rely on the color palette that I've selected to try and figure out who it is I'm painting. Or at least at first. Now, this narrows the field a lot because a good designer will try and use every tool at their disposal to try and reinforce the messaging or the sort of character that they're creating. So a blue Pokemon is very likely to be a water elemental, maybe? When I was a kid, this was actually a really simple task. There were only 120 Pokemon, but now there's, I don't know, 10,000. And I feel like the designers have really had to sort of branch out and make some unique, weird design decisions. And some of them are misses. So I'm curious, are there any Pokemon that you can think of that use a color palette that just doesn't match their element at all? The designers of Pokemon have really been deliberate about trying to leverage both shape and color. The fact that the game Who's That Pokemon is playable at all is a testament to the fact that they've done well with their silhouettes. Whether or not they've been effective with their color selection, I guess that's sort of up for interpretation, but definitely there were efforts made. Some shows may lean more heavily on just one or the other, like for example Adventure Time. In Adventure Time, the shapes are very, very simple, almost painfully simple, but the colors are so carefully selected and so well manicured that it manages to make the distance. Like, take for example Beemo, who has this perfect shade of a kind of desaturated green-blue that is so recognizable. Or Jake, who's this exquisite, just subtle Dijon mustard yellow-brown color. Finn doesn't really stand out really that much. He's got sort of 2 shades of green, 2 shades of blue, and the white hat. But as ambiguous as that is, stick in Jake's color and suddenly it's really, really clear what it is you're looking at. And this clearly demonstrates that you don't actually need to leverage both shape and color. You can go just one route or the other. An example that goes really hard the other direction are the 3 soldier dudes from Mulan. Each of them is clearly defined by actually a very basic geometric shape. One of them, Yao, is made out of squares, and the squares they're perfect for him because they reflect his personality, which is like gruff and tough and uncompromising. The second one, I think it's Ling. He is goofy and silly and just kind of a doofus, and he's made out of triangles. And the third one is Qianpo. Qianpo is made out of circles, and he's well, on top of being massive, he's just really nice and gentle and very food motivated. Now this example demonstrates something that's just a little bit extra special though, and something that really requires a powerhouse like Disney to be able to pull off. Consider for a moment the obviousness of the synesthetic connection between blue being water and red being fire. These connections are so obvious they're basically self-evident. A much less obvious synesthetic connection, and the one that we see here in Mulan, is this connection between triangles and silliness, and between squares and harshness. It's much, much less logical and rational, and much more intuitive. I guess my point is that there are many unrecognized layers to good character design. Disney knows that every detail is an opportunity for them to develop or reinforce their character if they're creative enough. And you never have to doubt Disney's creativity because at the end of the day, they're fantastic when it comes to their art, consistently. I'm not saying that every single one of their movies is perfect, but I can say that every piece of art that I've ever seen come out of Disney is totally... All right, so I'm very nearly finished with this painting. I hope you found my art blathering at least somewhat interesting, but you're running out of time. So if you haven't made your guess yet, go ahead and throw it in the comments. And if your guess has changed, I'd love to know that too. And if you can tell me the timestamp, that sounds really interesting and I guess sort of a sociological sort of way. And while you're putting your guesses into the comments, I'm going to share with you my favorite little-known Poke fact. Everyone knows the usual way that you would go about leveling up your Pokemon, but there is one alternative, and I think all of you Pokemon Go players will know exactly what I'm talking about. So here's what you do. You take one undesirable or sort of annoying Pokemon and you set him aside. This is known as your Poke Sacrifice. Now, when the other Pokemon realize what's going on, they'll likely enter into a sort of shark-like blood craze. A feeding frenzy, we'll call it. And once they've finished devouring the little prick, they'll actually end up taking on all of his knowledge and his experience. Sort of like Drew Barrymore in iZombie. Okay. All jokes aside though, this is your last chance for a guess. Go ahead, throw that in the comments. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you'd like to know what is the correct answer to this game of Who's That Pokemon, make sure you tune in for next week and I'll give you the answer. Maybe, if I remember. What if Disney made a Pokemon movie?